Hello, this is Mike Smith. Welcome back to another Maya tutorial. This time we're going to have a look at texturing using Photoshop. And you'll need to have a look at my previous UV mapping tutorials to actually get to this stage. You'll notice I've got my 3D object here. It's just a section of a brick wall. And I've got my UV map already laid out. So have a look at my previous tutorials to get to this stage. Now we need to make sure our project folder is set. And to do that, first make yourself a folder, put it somewhere on your computer that's safe, and give it an appropriate name. Then in Maya, go to File, Set Project, navigate to your project folder. My one's here, Texturing Tutorial, and then click on Set. And now if we open our project folder, there's a few more things we need to make sure we've done. First of all, save your scene again inside your project folder, so everything's in one place. And I've got this original texture files folder. You can call that anything you like really, as long as you know where it is and as long as you put your original texture files in there. Give those an appropriate name too. It does help a lot with your workflow. And here's the important one. Make sure you've got a source images folder, and it must be spelled exactly as you see it here. All lowercase, one word, no full stops or underscores. That's because Maya will look for that folder as you see it there. If it's called something different or spelt differently, it won't find it. So make sure that's set up. And one tip, if you're working on shared machines, or if you're like me working with several different projects at any particular time, you'll need to set your project folder every time you open your scene. So just very quickly go back to File, Set Project, and tell it where the folder is. It only takes a few seconds and it just makes sure all your texture files go in the right place. So now make sure your object has a name. In the outliner I've called this wall, and now we need to give it a new material, otherwise everything will actually go on the same material. Now the default one, as you know, is Lambert 1. So if you texture Lambert 1, every object will then have that texture. So give this a new material, right click, assign new material, and I'm going to choose a Lambert for simplicity because I don't want a specular or any kind of reflectivity. Go over to your attribute editor and give it a name. So I'll just call this Brick Texture 1. And press enter once you've titled that. You'll notice the tab up here will change once you've pressed enter. And now we're ready to go into Photoshop. So make sure your object is selected. Make sure you're in object mode. And in your UV texture editor window, go to Image, Create PSD Network. And that will open up another set of options. If we have a look here, if I just maximize this, you'll notice at the top, the name is a combination of your polygon object, as we titled it in Outliner, and the title of the material. So it's just called Brick Wall and then Wall Shape. Tick this box that says Open Adobe Photoshop, and now we can set the resolution. You can change this if you want to. You don't get too much choice. I generally leave it on the maximum if it's quite a large object, so a wall, the roof of a house, a floor, ceiling, a road, anything like that's quite large, so I'll use the maximum resolution. However, if it's a small object you're going to render, and if it's going to be in the background, it might be worth actually lowering this resolution. That will significantly lower the size of your texture files. So if you're worried about space, have a think about the resolution. Now we can have a look at our attributes at the bottom here. You'll notice it's got the name of my material, and I want to change the texture, that's the colour. You'll notice it's spelled the American way there, it's missing the U. And to move it to selected attributes, click on the right arrow. And I'm also going to use bump as well. I'll move that across. Now I'll explain what we can do with bump mapping in the second part of this tutorial, but for now I'll move it across just so it's ready. Now click on Create and it should open Photoshop automatically for you. If it doesn't, you can actually locate this PSD file in your source images folder and open it directly from there. So now we can get started actually applying this texture. If you know Photoshop well, this will be a really simple task for you. All we need to do is have a look at our layers. If that's not open, go to Window and then tick Layers, and this layers palette will actually open up. So from the top you've got your UV snapshot. That's just so we can actually see where our UV map is, where these faces are. Then you'll notice there's two folders, bricktexture1.bump and bricktexture1.color, again spelled the American way, it's missing the U. So we're not going to use bump yet, we'll use that in the second part, so I'll turn the visibility off of that for now. We just want to work with this .color folder, and you basically need to put your texture files inside that folder but above layer 1. Layer 1 is there because that's the grey that comes with a new Lambert. Also, it's so you can actually see your UV map. Otherwise it's a white set of lines on a white background, and that's obviously not going to show up. So you'll need your layer 1 there still. Just make sure the texture files go above that. If you know how to do that, you probably want to skip a few minutes. If not, just keep watching and I'll show you how to put this in. So open up one of your texture files. I'll go back to my project folder. And if I just find that, it's on my desktop, texturing tutorial, original texture files, and I've got my brick texture 1 there. So I'm going to open that straight into Photoshop. And you'll find it opens up in a separate tab at the top here. And if you want to work with this in a separate window, just drag that tab down. Drag it off the top there and it will open up in a separate window. Now we can select the arrow or the move tool from our tool palette, which is right at the top, and drag this brick texture directly onto our main file here. And if we look in the layers palette, it's created a new layer. First of all, I'll title that, so double click where it says layer 3, and I'm just going to call that brick 1, just so I know what it is without having to actually select it and try and move anything around. Move it down into the bricktexture1.color folder, again above our layer 1, and that's so you can actually see these UVs over the top. I'll just zoom in slightly so we can see that a bit better, and if I hold space and left click I can move this up a bit. And I just want to texture for this tutorial the very front and just one part of the top. I won't texture everything because it will take me quite a while to explain every step, so I'll just show you the first two parts and then you should be able to work it out from there. So I need to resize this. To do that I'll use Free Transform, which is up in Edit and then Free Transform, and you'll find in Photoshop or any Adobe application it tells you the shortcuts. So I'm on a Mac, that's Command and T. If you're on a PC, it'll be Control and T. Click on Free Transform, and now we can actually adjust the size. You'll find you can make it distort quite a lot. You can make it stretch and squash. If you don't want that, just hold Shift, and we can actually make sure everything stays to the right proportions. It doesn't squash or stretch. So now we can make this line up. I'll scale that down a bit more. And you have to think quite carefully with texturing, especially when you're resizing things like bricks or pavements or roads. You need to make sure it lines up. So at the bottom of my UV map here, I want to make sure the bricks sit on top of that, so it's not cutting through a brick. I want a whole brick. And then the same on the top here. So I'm going to scale this down a bit more, hold shift again, and I'll scale that down just until the brick is on the top there. Now you'll find, although that lines up quite well here, it doesn't line up at the very top. You could split this layer into two, but I'll show you a different way. I'll show you how to do that in Maya afterwards. So we just want to get the bulk of it down here. So now we can press enter, and I'll show you quickly just how to layer up textures. So I'm going to open another file. I'll go back to my project folder. I want to have a crack going through this brick. So I'll open up my other texture file here. So I'll bring that into Photoshop as well. There we go, and like we did before, I'll drag this tab down, I'll drag it off the top there, and I want to drag that straight onto my main file. So just make sure you've got the select tool or the arrow at the top of your tool palette and drag that across. And what I want to do is use just really the crack and some of the dirty areas from this texture file to actually come through this brick, otherwise it looks a bit clean. So I can position that, and I'll do the same as before. I'll scale it down, but we can be quite rough this time. And it's worth noting anything that goes outside of your UV map won't show up in Maya, but it also won't cause a problem. So I'll just scale that down a bit more. And I just really want this crack here in the middle, and I want some of this dirty area, so I'm going to bring this across a bit more. About there should do. Press enter, and I'm going to choose a different blending mode for this. Obviously we can't see the brick through there, and before I do that I'm going to tighten my layer. So double click on that, and I'm just going to call that crack texture. And now with that selected, we can have a look at our blending modes. So we've got normal at the moment, and you can experiment with these. I'm going to try overlay, see how that comes out. So we can't see much. What I might do now is actually open the levels of this texture, or this layer. So go up to image, adjustments, and then levels. And what I'm going to do is increase the black, and I'll also increase the white of this to try and make the crack stand out a bit more. So straight away we can see more of that crack, and you can see more of this dirty area here showing through. Let's increase the white again. And once you're happy, so maybe that shows up a bit too much, I'll lower the black a bit, and then I'm quite happy with that, so I'll click on OK. And what I'm going to do now is merge this down into one layer, because I'm happy with the position on that. If you wanted to keep it so it's separate layers, you can, that's absolutely fine. It will make your file size increase though, so it's just worth noting that. But for this particular tutorial, I'll merge that down. So I can select the top layer, that's the crack, go to layer, and then I want merge down at the bottom here. And that goes into one layer. And what I'm going to do now is have a look at where this actual layer goes, and we can see it's intruding in this other face here. So we need to make sure this part of the layer is not visible. And rather than rubbing that out or deleting it, I'm just going to mask that out, so I can duplicate the layer later on and I can unmask that area. So select the layer and go down to your layer mask at the bottom of your layers palette. That's the rectangle with the small circle in the middle. Click on that, and now if you look at your layer, you can actually select the layer itself or the layer mask. So be sure to select the layer mask for this next step. we can now go to our brush tool. If you click and hold on a brush, make sure you choose the brush at the very top. That's the default brush. And we want to use a medium-sized brush. You can change the size by using the square brackets. So I'll use a medium-sized brush, and make sure you've got black as your foreground colour. And before I do this, I'll also show you at the top left of the screen, if you click on this drop down menu where you've got what looks like the brush itself, that's the actual shape the brush is, and below it is the size. Click on the drop down menu and you've got a hardness setting. If the hardness is turned right up, you get quite a harsh edge. If it's dropped right down, I'll show you that. If I go down to 1 or 0, you actually get quite a soft brush. Now that can be good and it can be bad depending on what you want to do. For example, if I was to go quite close to my UV map here, it's quite difficult to actually get it right on that actual line. So what I'm going to do is turn the hardness right up to the maximum. So I'll just undo that. First of all, let's just go back a step or two, and I'll turn the hardness right up onto 100%. So now I can start rubbing out some of these areas we don't want. And when I say rub out, it's just masking it out. It has not actually gone completely. I just want to very roughly take away any of these areas that we don't want. And the good thing with masking is if you do go too far and rub out an area that you really want to keep, you could just select white, use the brush again, make sure you've selected the layer mask, and we can actually brush that area back in so it's not completely rubbed out. And this is what we call a non-destructive method of working. So once we've done that, before I go ahead and save this, I want to just texture one other part of this UV map, and that is actually the very top section of the wall, the area that's above this section here, and that is this particular face at the top. So what I'll do is select the actual layer itself, not the layer mask, and I'll go back to my tools palette, choose the marquee tool. That's the second one from the top. If you click and hold, you've got different types of marquees. I'll choose the rectangular marquee, and I'm going to select a larger area than I know I need. That's because we can mask it out later on. Select more than you need, and then copy and paste. So you could go to edit, copy and paste. If you're on a Mac, Command C and V, or if you're on a PC, Control C and V. So if you copy and paste, it will actually paste that into a new layer. Now what I'm going to do now is call that brick again, but I'm going to call it brick top, so at least I know which part of my actual file it is. Click on enter, choose your move tool, and now we can move that up to the top here. And what I want to do is make sure I've got the same colour bricks up here as I have in the very top of this part, so we can make sure the position is as close as we can possibly get. And if I zoom in, you'll find I need to actually adjust the height of this as well. Let's just zoom in a bit more, and now we can use free transform again, because I don't want any of this cement in between the bricks to show up. So I'm just going to actually stretch that. I'm not holding shift this time. I'm just going to stretch that so there's no cement on the bottom or the top. And you'll see why when we actually apply this to our model in Maya. I'm just going to move this down a bit by using the arrows on the keyboard. And that's about right. It's about as close as I can get it. So press enter. And now we can do the same as we did before by masking some areas of this out. So create a new layer mask. Choose your brush. choose black, and I need a slightly smaller brush this time, so I'll use the square brackets on the keyboard and just mask out some areas around this. And you can be quite rough. Like I said earlier, any textures that aren't within these faces just won't show up in Maya, but it won't cause a problem. That's why I've left a gap in this UV map, so we can be quite rough like that. So now, if I just zoom back out to show you what we've got, I'll save this. So go to File, Save, but don't save as and don't change the name, otherwise Maya won't know what to look for. So now we can minimize that. And we can close the original texture files down unless you're still working with them. I just want those out of the way for now. And if we actually select our object in Maya, if your texture doesn't show up straight away in your UV texture editor, that's not a problem. Just go to Image, Update PSD Network, and it should show up straight away. If it then doesn't show up on your actual 3D object, we just need to press one button on the keyboard. Now you know 4 is wireframe, you know 5 is shaded, 6 actually shows your textures. So you can still switch from wireframe to textured, which will just be 4 and then 6 rather than 4 and 5. And now we just want to really fine tune this. So I'm quite pleased with how that looks. The bricks line up nicely at the bottom, also at the top. And now we can have a look at the very top of our object. And I tried to get this as accurate as I could in Photoshop, but you can see here this doesn't line up perfectly. Also, there's a bit too much cement actually showing here. So with a brick wall, you've got the cement in between the bricks, but this is the same brick, it's just the front and then the top. So you could go back into Photoshop, adjust the file, save it, and then update the PSD network again. But what I'll do now is show you another way. If we have a look in our UV texture editor, I'll zoom in to the very top part of this, and what we can do is adjust the UVs slightly. Again, that's why I always leave a bit of space around these. So right click on the UV and select UV mode. And first of all, I want to get rid of this bit of cement on here. So I'm going to select the 2 UVs at the bottom. UVs are like vertices or a vertex. It's the point where in the 2D view where 2 or more edges meet. In the 3D view, it's where 3 or more edges meet. So you can see these 2 selected in our perspective view, and the same 2 are selected in the UV texture editor. Now what I can do is use my move tool, and I can actually move these UVs. And because the texture won't move, you'll see the texture actually change in our perspective view. So if I move that up a bit, you'll see the texture start to stretch. And if I move it quite a bit, you'll see it change a lot. And we're just going to move that up to fine tune it. So I'm quite happy with that now. This brick looks a lot better. And to make these bits line up, on here the cement in between the bricks, I'll choose the 2 UVs on the far right hand side, and I'm just going to move that to the right a little bit to make it actually line up. And again, if I move it a lot more, you'll see in the 3D view what's actually happening. So we can really fine tune that. There we go. So I'm happy with that. And let's just have a look to see what that looks like in object mode. I've got my wireframe off. The bricks look quite good. The crack looks quite nice. It's quite realistic. Another thing that's worth noting is with layer modes and blending modes in Photoshop, some of them don't work that well with Maya, so you might have to flatten layers down to a certain extent in Photoshop to make them show up in Maya. But just experiment with it. Keep saving as you go along. Remember to set your project folder, and if you watch the second part, I'll show you how to actually apply a bump map. So when we render this with lighting, some of these cracks really stand out. It won't just look completely flat. So keep saving it, make some notes, take some screenshots, try and learn something new.